Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Heavyweight contenders Jarrell Miller and Mariusz Wach, they have squared off for the first time in the official press conference to announce their November 11th fight in Long Island, New York at the Nassau Coliseum. The Miller-Wach showdown will act as the chief support to the Danny Jacobs vs Luis Arias clash. Before I get to a clip of the Faceoff and my thoughts in general, let's quickly go over the highlights of what Miller and Wach had to say at the press conference. So in terms of Wach, the 37-year-old Pole, who sports a 33-2 record, he led off first and he was back in his seat in under a minute or so. So the best from his brief statements was, "He hasn't met a war like me. November the 11th, it's going to be a war." Miller, meanwhile, he was his usual charismatic and boisterous self. He opened with reflections on how far he's come in boxing and that people don't realise how much work, effort and time it takes to get to the position he is now in. Then he said something that was a little bit quizzical, but that he was going through a lot in his personal life, his relationship in particular, and he almost didn't come to the press conference because he was so pissed. But he sort of added that it was a team effort that's gotten him to this point in his career, and it would have been disrespectful not to show. So he did. Miller talked about being super motivated. He's 296 pounds right now, and imagine where he'll be in 5 weeks. So that's what he was saying. He added that the motivation also comes from being super angry on the inside from another network trying to get him to recently fight a friend of his. So for me, I can only assume that they were trying to get him to fight Adam Kanowski. And given he was originally tipped to be on the Deontay Wilder November 4th card, it must have been for that date. He said he'd rather quit before fighting his friend. So he never named Adam Kanowski, but they are good friends. That's well documented. So I think we can safely assume that he was referring to Adam Kanowski. In terms of November the 11th, he said he will be killing something. He says he's mean, he's a killer, he's going to knock Wach's head off. And then he thanked Wach for signing the contract, saying it was hard to find another dummy to step in. Shortly after that, when the press conference part of it wrapped up, they got together and faced off.
Right down here, please, down the middle.
I like Jarrell Miller. He's a big character and he's someone that's good for the division. He's a sort of Dillian White type character, larger than life, whatnot. And it's always good to have a couple of guys like this around. But right now, so, he is in that contender. He's moved up from being a prospect. He's in the contender stage. But how good he is, I'm not quite sure just yet. I'm not entirely sold on him right now. I mean, he did get the win over Gerald Washington a couple of months back, and that was a good win. But Washington, for me, he looked like a beaten man before he got in the ring, and he didn't really show a lot of heart in the fight. And there were a couple of times in that fight where I thought Washington hurt Miller, but he didn't capitalize for whatever reason. I mean, credit has to go to Miller for fighting through it and ultimately stopping Washington. But in terms of Washington and Wach is a different kettle of fish. There's no quit in him, and he has shown his chin is made of granite. For me, this is a massive heat check to see how good or otherwise Miller really is. And I'm sure that's part of what Eddie Hearn is trying to find out here. He wants to match him against a solid fighter, someone that most people would expect him to beat, but it's not going to be someone who's easy, before he commits and launches in with a big slew of future fights or him headlining cards, because you can see where this is heading if he looks really good against Wach. It's all upside. But if he loses, well, then it's kind of back to the drawing board, and Hearn hasn't invested too much in him. So for Miller, this is really a make or break for his career in which direction it heads. In terms of Miller's weight, it does concern me a little bit in terms of where he's at. I mean, 296, I mean, that was heartening to hear he's at the same weight he last fought at, and he's still got just over a month to the next fight. But 296, I mean, even if he gets down 20 pounds, that's still, 275. That's very heavy. But I do think we'd see a different looking Miller at 275. It can only be good for him to get down. Because I think in terms of Wach, what this guy's going to bring, I mean, he has fought regularly 12 rounds. So Miller does need to come in much lighter than the high 290s. And so while Wach may be past his best, he certainly will challenge Miller. And if Miller is found wanting for whatever reason, particularly late on, if he gets gassed or whatever, Wach could capitalise. But don't get it twisted, I am favouring Miller to win this fight. I think he is maybe slightly more than a slight favourite, so maybe 60-40, but I don't think it's an easy fight by any stretch. I could see it being a fight where Miller looks very good for the first 6 or 8 rounds, but then Wach maybe steals some later on if Miller starts to tire. For me, this one is probably going to be a decision win for Miller. But if it's not a decision, then actually Miller could be getting stopped here late on in the fight, because I don't see Wach getting stopped. Because I don't see Wach getting stopped based on his previous history. I think it will be Miller who gets the win, but I wouldn't be shocked if Wach did win. And remember, if Wach wins, this would be huge for his career, and it would really solidify another run to a title for Wach. I don't know if he's got the chops to quite get there, but it would be a shot in the arm for his career. And a shot in the arm for Miller if he can get the win too. It will be all onwards and upwards if he can get the W. What do you make of it? Drop a comment, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.